In a moment here, the acting Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan on the Hill about to testify at a House hearing on defense spending, outlining the budget for 2020. This comes on the heels of an announcement from the Pentagon, significant one, approving $1 billion to go to about 57 miles of border wall in the Southwest. Congressman Mark Green serves on the Homeland Security and Oversight Committees. And, sir, thank you for your time today. It's good to have you back on our program here. What do you think of this move by the Pentagon? What's that going to do for border security?
No, I think it's great. It's another 57 miles of fence. We know fences work. That argument is settled. Clearly, the president has the authority to do this. I think the guys at the Pentagon know that border security is national security, and they understand their mission is, securing the nation, making sure that we win our nation's wars, and that they're strong enough not to ever have to fight a war. So border security is national security, and they're doing their part.
So you support this move, clearly. If you put the billion from the Pentagon from overnight with the $3.6 billion from military construction projects, you're at $5 billion.
Yeah, that's a lot of fence.
Are you now at the point that the president was looking for, that number?
I think his initial number was 5.7. We're very close to that, so yeah, I think so.
What about lawsuits? Could they get in your way?
Well, we know that they're going to attempt that, but right now, the concern is getting the border secure, and we have to move forward as quickly as we can to do that. I believe, and I've said before, it's a national crisis. I agree with the president. 300 Americans dying every week of heroin overdose. 90% of the heroin coming across the southern border. This is a crisis, and this is the right response.
I know how you and your Republican colleagues feel about it. Do you believe Democrats are coming around on this in the same way?
Talking to some of those Democrats that are in particularly Trump districts, there are many of them that are ready to move on. They have to go back to their constituents and say they're for border security. So the conversation, they're kind of tired of having it. So I think there are some that are coming over to our side on this issue.
When you say move on, you mean move toward where you are on this, or move on to something else?
Move on to a new subject. They don't like the conversation because it puts them in the crosshairs of people who want to see them removed from office.
Oh. Let's see what happens on that. In the meantime, the Mueller fallout, it is significant. Have not yet had a chance to talk to you about this, but I just want to hear a little thing from Adam Schiff, who's in the crosshairs of a lot of those on the Hill Watch.
There are a lot of open questions. Why did the Russians offer dirt on Hillary Clinton? Why did the president's son say that he would love to have that help? Why did they set up a meeting at Trump Tower? Why did they keep it secret? Why did they lie about it? These questions have not been answered by the summary we got from Bill Barr.
Well, there's a lot of questions on all that. Where are you, sir, today on what we've learned?
Well, I think Adam Schiff should step down as the chairman of the House Intel Committee. I mean, many times he mentioned that there was this credible evidence that he had seen and that he had verified, and after a 2-year lengthy investigation by a very respected, prosecutor, we have no evidence of collusion. In fact, probably the only collusion has been between the liberal media and the DNC to throw the 2020 election. Very clearly, there was no collusion. Adam Schiff has been talking about evidence. He's the chairman of House Intel. His, policies on evidence before his committee, I mean, this is ridiculous. He needs to step down. I mean, it's bad. We don't need a conspiracy theorist running our House Intel Committee.
Kevin McCarthy, Kellyanne Conway, and yourself, a lot of it have called for that. I don't expect it'll happen, though, do you?
No, it probably won't. But our speaker needs to step up. This is about the credibility of the United States House of Representatives, the credibility of the House Intel Committee. Hopefully she'll do it, but they haven't acted that way so far in this session of Congress.
Yeah. Last point on all this, 500 witnesses, 675 days. Senator Kennedy was just describing why it took so long. And then once he saw the list of subpoenas and the amount of interviews that were conducted, he figured, well, this is why. And now when you see the conclusion in the summary report by Bill Barr, do you stop and ask yourself, what in the world was this all about? And furthermore, what was the original sin? Where did this start?
Well, it sounds like it started at the DNC and them creating some dossiers and things like that to justify the FISA warrants. So, I mean, we probably need some investigation into the other side and what happened there. I don't know that that'll happen in this Congress. But
you're getting that already at the IG. There are at least 2 probes that are underway
that's
now
right.
at DOJ.
Yeah, that's right, and that's excellent, and we look forward to hearing from them.
All right, Mark Green, thank you for your time today. Maybe
Thanks,
in a month
Bill.
or two we will see what that reveals. Thank you for your time.
Joining me now is House Oversight Committee member, Tennessee Congressman Mark Green. Congressman, thanks for coming in. You're among those calling on Schiff to resign from his position. He's chairman of the Intel Committee. Why should he resign?
Thanks, David, for having me on the show. I think he should resign because basically he has said he physically saw evidence that was convincing that the President of the United States had committed a crime. And now we find out that there was never any evidence that showed collusion of any kind. Mr. Schiff's standards of evidence are very clearly inappropriate, wrong. He should not be chairing the House Intel Committee. It makes no sense to have someone who can say that they saw evidence when there was never any evidence. I just think it's wrong. I mean, he's a conspiracy theorist, basically, is what he is, and he should not be leading the House Intel Committee.
You know, I went back and looked at quotes from him in which he did say specifically that he has seen credible evidence that there was collusion. Was he just making it up? I mean, is there somewhere that some access to some document that he might have that Mr. Mueller never saw?
I can't imagine. I mean, it's very clear with their threat to continue investigations that their real goal is to take the president down. And I genuinely believe when they took over in the House this year, they were teeing up all these investigations, even in oversight with Michael Cohen coming in. The goal is to take the president down. If he had evidence, there is no way in the world he would keep that from Bob Mueller. There is no way.
Well, despite your calls for him to resign, I think it's probably more likely he would become a Republican than resign. Don't you?
That's a good one. I'm going to remember that line if I can use that. I will.
Well, but,
yeah,
I mean, you don't really think there's any possibility he would resign.
Well, clearly he's not going to resign, but you know, the speaker could ask him or even put pressure on him. She could actually pull him from his speakership or his chairmanship of the committee. So she could do that for the integrity of the committee and for the integrity of the House, and I think she should do that.
You know, it was about a year ago, it was in April 2018, when the House Intel Committee, of course, then run by Republicans, came out with a report that said pretty much what the Mueller report said, that there was no collusion. There were some hits on the president. It suggested that perhaps he was indiscreet in some of the things he said, but in terms of collusion, there was none, no evidence. It pretty much paralleled what Mr. Mueller said, even though Democrats were furious at the House report. They haven't had the guts to come out and say they're furious with the Mueller report after having supported Mr. Mueller for so long.
That's right. They talked about how impartial he was going to be and how great of a prosecutor, investigator he was going to be. So their credibility will only be worsened if they come out and criticize him. But the Senate, you know, the Senate came out with a version just a few months ago as well and basically said the same thing. There is no evidence of collusion here. And yet Mr. Schiff wants to keep on investigating, wasting the time. You know, and it's an opportunity cost. Whenever a committee goes and looks at one thing, they can't be looking at something else. And we have some serious problems in the country. Active duty suicides in the Army increased this last year. Why are we not looking into that?
Yeah.
No, we're not, because all they want to do is ding President Trump.
You know, it's not only a waste of time, it's a waste of something that you know well inside the Beltway. It's a waste of political capital. And I'm just wondering, you work with these people every day. I'm sure you're, you know, off camera, you're friendly with some of them. Don't you ever suggest, look, you guys can't be serious. This is not going to be a winning issue. I mean, do they really plan on carrying it through, even though Mr. Mueller said there's nothing there?
It seems to be that they want to continue these investigations. Clearly, House Intel wants to. Now, whether or not oversight will continue down this path, we'll have to wait and see. But very clearly, Mr. Schiff had said he wants to go forward with more investigation. He's doubling down, and it just continues to destroy his credibility. And I think that's why Leader McCarthy, you know, kicked this off, and now the rest of us are sort of joining in the chorus. He needs to step down.
Well, it may also be destroying their chances for a win in 2020. So, you know, I mean, I assume they think they know what they're doing, but we'll leave them to their own devices. Congressman Mark Green, great to see you, sir.
Thanks,
Thank you
David.
for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Joining us tonight is Congressman Jim Jordan, ranking member of the House Oversight Committee. member of the Judiciary Committee, co-founder of the House Freedom Caucus, and one of the president's great advocates and supporters throughout. Congressman, great to have you with us.
Good to be with you, Lou.
Let's go straight to the point here. This is a conspiracy. That is clear.
Yeah.
It was an attack on the presidency. We also know that, if I may quote from the Mueller probe and the text by Lisa Page to Peter Strzok saying this. Well, let's go straight to the quote, which is, and if we could put that up, it's a very simple quote. POTUS wants to know everything we are doing. This in September of 2016. Yeah. This seems to me to be the appropriate jumping off point to investigate what started all of this, who directed it, and who insisted on where it might lead. Your thoughts?
I totally agree. Look, if you go back to this dossier, one party's opposition research document, dressed all up, made to appear to be legitimate intelligence, take it to a secret court to get a warrant to spy on the other party's campaign. That is never supposed to happen in this country. But that's exactly what took place. And remember this, I go back to this because I think it's so important. When it was President-elect Trump, January of 2017, the president hasn't even been sworn into office yet. January of 2017, the top Democrat in the government, Chuck Schumer, says this: if you mess with the intelligence community, they have 6 ways to Sunday to get back at you. Think about that statement.
Yeah.
That is not supposed to be how it works. Get back at the president for what? For winning the election? So this is why it's so important we do get to the bottom of this, find out exactly who was involved in perpetrating this whole dossier narrative, using that dossier to start this whole crazy, ridiculous thing that they did. That's why it's important, because we can never have this happen again in this great country.
And the words that Lisa Page texted, POTUS wants to know everything we are doing.
Yeah.
Those are words that will resonate, I believe, throughout much of the rest of this year.
So there are key people we have to look at. Obviously, the key 5 people at the FBI who've all been fired or demoted or left the FBI: Comey, McCabe, the chief counsel at the FBI, Jim Baker, who was demoted, then left, and is now under investigation by the Justice Department, Lisa Page, Peter Strzok. But also Brennan needs to be examined. And then the one person that I think is critical to all this, remember, and this guy took the 5th in front of the Judiciary Committee last Congress, Glenn Simpson. Glenn Simpson, who is the guy who was paid by the Clinton campaign through the law firm Perkins Coie, who went and hired the foreigner Christopher Steele, who put this dossier together. And he has not answered our questions. He took the 5th in front of the Judiciary Committee. It's interesting, Lou. Jerry Nadler sends out 81 letters to 60-some different individuals trying to get all the information he can, but he doesn't send a letter to Glenn Simpson. Now, why is that? So I think he's an important person that we need to get in, see if he will answer questions now, get documents and information from him so we can get to the bottom of all this.
At this point, do you think it would be appropriate to have a grand jury to pursue each of these lines of inquiry that we're talking about here tonight?
I think we need to remember a couple things. One, Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General at the Justice Department, is in fact doing an investigation. He's supposed to have his report sometime late spring, early summer. There's also John Huber, U.S. Attorney, State of Utah, who's looking at the whole potential of FISA abuse and what happened with the FISA court. Now, we haven't heard a thing from him. I don't know what he's doing, but at some point he's supposed to have a report as well. I look forward to those 2 things, but we may have to do more. All I know is this was so egregious, so wrong, so bad. It can never happen again in this country, and that's why we need to hold people accountable who were responsible for starting the whole thing.
Well, another who has played a central role in maintaining throughout for 2 years, claiming that he had evidence of collusion. Now that, of course, Congressman Adam Schiff, amongst others, the minority leader, Kevin McCarthy, calling for his resignation. Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president, calling for his resignation. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, look, he's the one who pushed for Devin Nunes to step down as chairman or step down off the leading the investigation into this issue a couple of years ago. It seems a little hypocritical if he doesn't, particularly because he was palling around with Glenn Simpson last summer. Also, you have the fact that it was Adam Schiff who tried to prevent Congress from learning who paid for the dossier, tried to prevent Congress from understanding that the Clinton campaign was the one who paid the law firm who paid Glenn Simpson. So again, it seems a little hypocritical if he doesn't step aside from some of the investigations he's now pushing.
Of course, a little hypocrisy is no problem at all for the radical Dems. Congressman, always good to have you with us. We appreciate it.